Here now is Conservative MP and a leadership candidate in the days of a very different Tory party, David Davis. It's always good to see him. Is this online harms bill actually going to happen?
Oh, it's going to happen. I mean, we thought, frankly, that we had taken out the worst bit. We thought, there was a piece of it which talked about stopping the platforms carrying legal but harmful, and then leaving harmful as a huge judgment area for one of the regulators to decide on. We thought we'd sort of cured it by getting rid of that. But as you sort of alluded to earlier, there are still lots of bits and pieces of it which are still aiming to control things that are, psychologically harmful, for example, or deliberate misinformation. How the devil you tell that, I don't know. With crimes, as it were, that are in the eye of the beholder, and that's always dangerous. If you render illegal or you render improper to put out something which you can't actually measure. You can tell if a murder's taken place, you can tell if a burglary's taken place, you can tell if a fraud has taken place, but you can't necessarily tell if something I've said to you has proved psychologically harmful to you. How do you tell that? Go to your psychiatrist, ask your opinion? I mean, I don't know.
Well, we're creating a category of law for things that are not legally measurable. A lot of other, I was being asked a couple of minutes ago, what's up with Canada and Australia? I fell afoul a decade or so back of Canada's human rights commissions, which, unlike any other Canadian court or any court in the English world as it is, truth is not a defence. As you said, it's strictly according to whether a person takes offence. And these things, as bad as they are, have generally been introduced by left-of-centre governments to protect their preferred identity group. So if a Muslim takes offence at something somebody says, you can't really do anything about it because only the plaintiff knows whether the offence is genuine or not. Why would a Conservative government be wanting to introduce that principle and expand that principle in the UK?
Well, I think what's happened, you're right about, I used to live in Canada. It fills me with grief to see what's happening there. It just reminds me of the old saying, there's no intolerance like liberal intolerance. It is the worst sort in many ways. But to come back to this piece of legislation, it sort of started with a good intention. You have bodies like the NSPCC, the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, who are very, very, very concerned about some quite narrow but very significant issues. For example, children being encouraged or told how to carry out self-harm. Now, there are small pieces of this bill that fit into that, and they're, in my view, if that's all the bill contained, I would be perfectly happy with that. But what governments tend to do is they try and build things up and be seen to be doing something. The urge to be seen to do something is one of the great dangers of modern politics. Got to be seen to fix this, seen to fix that. And actually, if you look at the bill, and I don't want to bore your audience with the bill, but the two bits of it, there's encouraging self-harm or assisting suicide. I'm perfectly happy with that. Offences relating to revenge pornography or extreme pornography. I'm happy with that. Everything else on the list, other than committing something which is harmful but legal, is already in the law. There's hate crime, public order offences, drug-related offences, weapons offences, you name it. They're all already in the law. What they've done is built this bill up out of other offences and then added little bits in at the edge. And it's quite dangerous creating law that way, because what happens is people miss it. People don't see it. They think, most of this is sensible stuff. Actually, in the middle of it, this idea of a harm which is in the eye of the beholder is a very, very dangerous element in British law. Because what it does is it hands over to some other body, like Ofcom, for example, or like the body you faced in in Canada to make a judgment. And that judgment, frankly, is made on the mores of the day, and that can be quite fashionable. We've seen it in the battles over the trans issues recently. You know, these are not set down clear guidelines. They're things that have changed really even in the last 10 years. And so it's very dangerous law. If you create law like that, what you're doing is handing to an official a series of powers which can be quite destructive of people's lives. I mean, these laws will allow you to send people to prison for, even for the lesser offences, for 51 weeks. You know, nearly a year in prison for offending somebody.
Yeah. No, you mentioned judges. I miss the old days when the joke about English judges under their wigs was that they'd say, "What are these rolling stones to whom the witness refers?" And they were supposed to be out of it, which is what you want in a judge, because you want him to be operating from legal principles. Whereas now it seems to me in the last 10 years that the judges have changed somewhat, and in many ways on a lot of these issues that are roiling the culture on transgender rights and all the rest of it, they're actually far ahead of where the overall culture actually is.
Well, that's right. I mean, bear in mind, a vast quantity of British law is so-called case law. It's come about from previous cases down to centuries almost, which is why it's important your judge is slightly distant from today's fashions. The simple truth is he's looking back at all the previous law, because that you can be absolutely clear what it means. It's established. Actually, you make a joke about the Rolling Stones, but I can actually remember, I think it was Mick Jagger being taken to court, and the judge was smart enough. I think it was I can't remember the detail of the offence, but the judge said, this case is ridiculous. We should not be breaking a butterfly on a wheel. That's what he said about Mick Jagger. He understood only too well what was going on in society. Actually, we've got fantastically good judges. Sorry. Yeah.
And we are now breaking butterflies on a wheel is now what's going on every moment in our society. I remember that was the headline of the Times leader, I think, the following day. Who breaks a butterfly on a wheel? And yet that actually is what's going on every moment. And this bill seems likely to accelerate it.
And a wise government does not set up an Act of Parliament, which is what this will become in due course. It does not set up an Act of Parliament which can then become the battlefield, or the laws it creates can become the battlefield for social arguments. Maybe perfectly legitimate social arguments going on, but they shouldn't be fought in the law where somebody goes to prison if they're the wrong side of the argument. That's entirely wrong. And we've seen more and more of that over the years. Now, I'm comfortable with some grand principles being entrenched in the law. You and I might differ, for example, over, the European Convention, because free speech, freedom of association, would be important to the truckers you were talking about earlier, for example. These are very, very important principles, but they're well understood. They're understood over hundreds of years. They've been fought over. Civil wars have been fought over them. So we know what we mean by that. Whereas what's being put into this, even where the Law Society says, well, it gives a definition of psychological harm. I'm sorry, but, harm and pain are different things. And, people think about psychological harm as being made to feel psychological pain. No, it isn't. But nevertheless, we're going to get to a situation where we're not very careful, where if somebody causes you a bit of psychological discomfort, they end up on the wrong side of a criminal sentence. We can't have that. And that's the danger in this bill. We can probably fix it, but I think it's the danger in this bill.
No. You made a very interesting point just now, David, when you said essentially what we're likely to get is the state and the courts mediating what ought to be social relations or the realm of manners, in fact, as judges used to say in healthier times. So we're going to stay on this, and we thank you, as always, for explaining its finer points to us. Good to see you again.